Hello, everybody. Hello. My migraine's not as bad. I took some Advil, just to make sure that it wasn't present during the stream, but I'm feeling a lot better. A lot better. That's a good thing. But hello, everybody. Mr. Underhill. Underhill. Yeah. That's a Mr. Kennedy reference. Oh, that's crazy. Mr. Kennedy, what a deep cut, man. Mr. Kennedy. Kennedy. What a deep cut. Oh yeah, the cream rises to the top, brother. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Jess. Oh yeah. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something, brother. Oh, yeah. Let me tell you something, Mean Gene. The cream. Cream of the crop. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, Macho Man. Sorry. Anyway, this is not your typical, like, hello, everybody. Get to your seats and blah, blah, blah. Wrestling 101. Yes, it's finally time. I teased it for long enough. It's finally time for Wrestling 101. So welcome everybody. Why don't you go ahead and get to your seats, get your pens, your papers ready. We got a lot to cover. This is just the bare basics. We're not going into like specific stories or wrestlers or anything. We'll go through it. If I feel like there's somebody or a storyline worth addressing, we'll talk about it. But I'm not anticipating I'm not anticipating us to really be talking about anyone specific. We're just covering some of the core ideas of what pro wrestling is, because some people might think like, oh, is it like Olympic wrestling? No, it's pro. It's pro wrestling, which means there's chairs and tables. No, professional wrestling is very campy and silly, but we'll get into it. But it's campy and silly and honestly just a little bit gay, which I think is why I like it so much. But yeah, we'll get into all that. We'll get into it. But no, real wrestling, quote unquote real wrestling, because I hate saying real wrestling because it implies that wrestlers aren't taking huge bumps and getting really hurt doing this. Like sometimes they're falling through chairs and tables and ladders and stuff. It hurts, you know. But when I say like quote unquote real wrestling, it's more like Olympic wrestling. You know, like the spandex tights, although I suppose you also wear spandex tights at pro wrestling as well. Look, I'm just trying to say that there is a difference. You know. But before we get into all of that, I wanted to, you know, just as usual, we begin the lecture by just kind of giving people time to stumble into class. I know a lot of you guys are late. I get it. My class is late in the afternoon. You've got a lot of places to be. I get that. So don't you worry, I understand. I'm not gonna give you no grief about it. It's all good. I see Underhill is cosplaying as the greatest Canadian wrestler who ever lived, Christian Cage. Wow. Christian Cage, I mean, there's no greater wrestler, and don't say names like Y2J, Omega, or any member of the Hearts. Damn. I'm gonna be real. It's funny you say that. My Mount Rushmore of Canadian wrestlers does not even include Y2J, Omega, or, well, it includes one member of the Hearts. Oh yeah, wrestling brother. Oh yeah, Wilhelm. How you doing, Wilhelm? Oh yeah, look at that. The cream rises to the top in the comments. Oh yeah, you got the Owl Boy himself in the comments. Oh yeah! Sorry. Y2J, more like please retire. Yeah, Y2J, more like stayed too long. Outstayed the welcome. Yeah, no, my Mount Rushmore for Canadian wrestlers is Brett. I love Owen, but I feel like Owen was taken way too soon from us, so we didn't. Like, he already did amazing shit, but I feel like I gotta put Brett there. And then Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Edge. But Christian's a very close fifth. But yeah, that's my Mount Rushmore for Canadians. Brett, Sammy, Kev, Edge. But also Christian's very cool. Especially lately. Holy shit. But yeah. And I love Kenny as well. Kenny Omega is great as well. Kenny, you can't go wrong with Kenny. Anyway. Oh my god, I'm like... My voice is all fucked up. I apologize. But yeah. Is there any other topics or anything like that we want to like kind of discuss before we jump into Wrestling 101? Because we'll be there for... It's not a long lecture. It's not going to take that long. It's going to be the usual like hour length. It's not going to be that long. It's going to be just a small little lecture to kind of dive into things. And really talk about the WRASSLIN, because I love the WRASSLIN. And I know a lot of other folks don't like the WRASSLIN. I get that. I understand that. But I love it. How's your health? Migraines are still really bad. The humidity here is still awful. So they're better. It's better than it's been. I had some relief yesterday because the humidity was really low. And I didn't really feel it much yesterday, which was very nice. But today I woke up and it was pretty bad again. So I was like, okay, take an Advil. So I've had an Advil, I'm okay. But yeah, I'm definitely not great right now. I'll be better when the summer ends, I think. But thank you for asking, Matt. I appreciate it. I want to learn about the audience stuff, like how everybody has perfect signs. There's not much to the audience stuff. It's just a lot of the audience just makes really badass signs. There's some reoccurring members of the audience. NXT, which is a WWE show, has like a regular audience because it's in the same location. They film in the same location. They don't travel as much. But there are WWE shows like Raw and SmackDown that actually do have reoccurring fans, like Brock Lesnar guy and Green Shirt guy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Green Shirt guy, Brock Lesnar guy. Yeah. Finally, something I'm knowledgeable. Did you know JBL punched the Blue Meanie for realsies? He did punch the Blue Meanie for realsies. He fucked Blue Meanie up. I don't even know why he did that. Blue Meanie is a gem. At least as far as I know. He could be an awful person behind the scenes. I don't know. But he just seems like a funny little guy who likes the Beatles. And JBL beat the shit out of him. It was fucked up. Anyway. Which NXT era do you prefer? I'm not a huge NXT guy, so actually, I'm not gonna lie to you. Because I've gotten into it more recently, I think NXT 2.0, believe it or not, like the current NXT. Although I don't know if it's still referred to as 2.0. Like Shawn's era. Again, it's not to say that Triple H's era in NXT was bad. But Shawn's era, if you don't know, Shawn Michaels, Triple H have each had a turn guiding NXT. NXT is just the younger talent who are starting out in WWE for like the first time before going to Raw and SmackDown, which are considered like the main roster. Do you believe in Joe Hendry? I believe in Joe Hendry. I love Joe Hendry. Because I love him in London, and Paris, and Tokyo, America, Scotland, and Canada, and Mexico. They say, I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry. Okay, enough of that. Anyway, without further ado, I think it's time that we really dive into today's lesson. So, as I said before, grab yourself pen, paper, and get ready for a bit of a dissection into Wrestling 101. All I'm gonna say is I'm being very cheeky with this stream. I'm being very cheeky. This is gonna be important stuff to know going forward. Okay? There will be a test, but not until much later. You're gonna really want to pay attention to this stream. If you're here, you were here, and you'll know a long time from now. But you will know. You will get it, because you were here. You'll understand why this stream is actually kind of important. This will be on your midterm. So, anyway. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and crack a cold one with old Professor Underhill and give me a hell yeah! That was not bad, actually. If you want to crack a cold one with Mr. Underhill, give me a hell yeah! There we go. Okay. Let's go ahead. Let's do it. Welcome to Wrestling 101 with your teacher, Professor Underhill. I don't know why it says Mr. Underhill. It's supposed to be Professor Underhill. These are our learning streams. Yeah. With everybody saying L.A. Night. Yeah. I was washing my spandex. Understandable. Don't worry, we're here now. Alright, here we go. Wrestling 101. This is going to be going over the core rules. It's not going to be going over anything specific. So if you're thinking about like, well, how come you didn't talk about this? We will eventually talk about it. There will be other wrestling stuff. It's not the lessons that I'm the most excited for. I'm actually most excited for the lessons that will be beginning next week, which will be very interesting. But this is, the wrestling stuff I love. It's very fun. And that's the bottom line, because Underhill said so. Yeah. Let us begin. So basically what we're going to be going over today is we are going to be going over, again, as I said, just the bare basics, the bare minimum for you to kind of dive into the world of pro wrestling. We're going to be going over some terms. We're going to be going over the different eras in wrestling, because yes, there are eras. We are currently in a very exciting era right now, actually. And then we will be going over some of the major promotions, and then doing a little Q&A if anybody has any questions at the end. I have a question. Do you acknowledge your tribal chief? I acknowledge my tribal chief, Roman Reigns. I do not acknowledge Solo. And I am now waiting for Jacob Fatu to break my fucking door down and beat the shit out of me because I said that. Victor, thank you for becoming a member of the Elite Parliament. I hope you enjoy your badge and your emotes. But yeah, so we will be going over glossary of terms. We will be going over the different eras, and we will be going over the different promotions, because it's not just WWE. There's a very big world out there. In fact, Joe Hendry, who you've probably seen in memes of "say his name and he appears," Joe Hendry is not a member of WWE, and yet he's one of the more popular wrestlers around right now. So we'll get into it, and then we'll do any questions that you guys may have. There's gonna be some stuff that I will save, such as the Bloodline storyline, the Attitude Era as in its entirety. All that stuff I'm gonna likely save, because it's stuff that I feel like I really want to dive into, and we'll talk a bit more about that when we actually get to those lessons. Like certain storyline, I'll be doing lessons on certain storylines and stuff like that, but we will still talk about them a bit at the end. So, save your questions for the end. Unless it's something about like the slide that we are on, then you can ask questions, of course, and I'll answer them. But if it's any questions that don't pertain to what's on the slide, just save it for the end and we'll get to it. So let's go ahead and begin. Wrestling, being a very old form of storytelling, has a lot of lingo that might confuse newer fans. A lot of this comes from a time when wrestling was part of traveling carnival shows, which had their own lingo referred to as carny speak. Wrestling does still use carny speak here and there, but not quite to the same extent that it once did. Spelled that wrong. The following are the most prominent examples of what you're likely to hear from a wrestling fanboy such as myself. All right, so, that's not what I meant to grab. So, again, like many other things in, why can't I grab me? Like many other things in the, the fighting game community, as an example, right? Like, there's terms like meaty, mix up, like DP, stuff like that, and it doesn't mean the naughty thing, it means Dragon Punch. Like Shotos, stuff like that, like where they all have terms that, kind of like are specific to that community, so too does the wrestling community. And these are just a few of the terms that you're most likely to hear. I see hands a-waving in the chat. Okay. Kayfabe. Kayfabe means the fictional story of wrestling. So kayfabe would imply, okay, The Undertaker as an example, right? The Undertaker is an undead zombie wizard in kayfabe, but in actuality is a pretty cool dude named Mark Calloway. Very funny dude, actually, very funny man. But Undertaker in kayfabe is a very serious, dark, brooding wizard who shoots lightning and can summon can summon undeads, and he's fucking scary. Right? That's kayfabe. That's the fictional story of wrestling, right? Another example could be, trying to think of a more down-to-earth example. Rhea Ripley and Dominic Mysterio are a great example of kayfabe. Rhea Ripley and Dominic Mysterio play a couple, in the kayfabe world of wrestling, the fictional world. But in reality, they are both actually married to other people. Rhea's married to the lovely Buddy, who is a wrestler over at AEW. And Dom is married to also a very lovely person, but they are not a wrestler. They're just kind of a very nice person, from what I understand. So yeah. Kayfabe, WRASSLIN lore. Yes, wrestling has a fuck ton of lore, actually. Wrestling has deeper lore than most anime. How many wizards are there in wrestling? Not as many as you might like, but more than you might think, is what I'll say. Undertaker also has his brother, Kane, who was burned in a fire and essentially, like, went to hell and came back, and Kane is a cool character played by kind of an awful dude in real life. Weirdly enough, the guy who plays Kane turned out to be like a Republican governor later in life, which is very weird. But yeah, so yeah, like Undertaker and Kane are brothers in kayfabe, but in reality, they're not related. Sorry to break hearts there. O owl of knowledge, what is your wisdom? If the ball does not fit in your mouth, then it's not your ball. Hell is real? What? Yes, hell is a very real place in wrestling. In fact, there is I forgot a slide. Oh, fuck me. I forgot stipulations. I meant to add stipulations as a slide. We'll talk about stipulations when we get to Q&A. We'll talk about stipulations when we get there. Stipulations, if you don't know, is just, this is also another good glossary of terms. Stipulation just means what type of match is it. Heck in a sec. Yeah, so Hell in a Cell is actually a match stipulation where the ring is surrounded by a gigantic cage that goes very high up. We're talking multiple, like very high. I think it's like, what is it, like 20 feet in the air or something like that? It's pretty fucking high. And it has a flat, so it's made out of cage, and it's also made out of cage on the top, so you can actually crawl all the way up the Hell in a Cell and fight on top of Hell in a Cell, multiple feet above the ring and also the rest of the crowd. Very famously, The Undertaker threw Mick Foley off the top of Hell in a Cell through the announce table, and he thought that he killed him. I thought he killed him when I was a kid, and a lot of people in the crowd thought that he killed him. In fact, Jerry the King Lawler on commentary very famously says he killed him. He's dead. Yeah, Jerry's like, he just killed him. He's dead. Oh, he's dead. That was Jerry's thing. Oh, he's dead. Oh God, that man is broken in half. Yeah, JR, if you've ever heard anybody ever do it like, by God, or what a move, like stunner, that's good old JR. He's a ring announcer. Ring announcers are also very important in wrestling because they kind of spice it up. My favorite is a dude who's been around for an unbelievably long time, a man by the name of Michael Cole. Michael Cole used to also be a villain on the show, and he was such an insufferable asshole at that time. But I love Michael Cole. He's fantastic. I just came in. Who killed who? Nobody's dead. That said, there have been wrestlers who have died in kayfabe and then returned. Undertaker very famously has been buried alive multiple times and returned from the grave quite a few times because he's an undead zombie wizard who shoots lightning out of his hands. Which is funny because it's like that makes it sound like Undertaker's like wrestling's very silly, and it is. But Undertaker is also one of the wrestlers who I think is the most revered in the entire mythos of not just WWE but wrestling as a whole. Undertaker is very beloved and an unbelievable worker as well. We just got in and there's already death. Look, it's wrestling, okay? Sometimes people are gonna die, okay? Anyway, like I said, we'll get to stipulations later, but yes, hell is a very real place that exists in the kayfabe world of wrestling. Kayfabe, of course, just meaning the fictional story of wrestling. Next. Face. So if somebody says, oh, John Cena is a face, The Rock once was a face. Stone Cold might be the best face there's ever been. Face just means good guy, right? I don't like when Stone Cold's a bad guy. Stone Cold should either be a tweener, which just means in between face and the bad guys. We'll get to that. And a good guy, a face. So like a good guy is basically like either a face or a baby face. Baby face just meaning like super sweet, everybody loves them, they're the good guy, right? Very simple. Face just means good guy. Heel. A heel means bad guy. This is bad guys would be right now The Rock is a heel. He's a bad guy right now. Not protagonist versus antagonist. You can call them that, but the thing is most wrestlers believe they are the protagonist. So protagonist and antagonist doesn't quite work because every wrestler is the protagonist of their own story. There is no protagonist and antagonist in wrestling because there's no major like this is the main character, this is the main character's rival, like this is the main character, this is the character who like progresses the plot. Like there is no, that doesn't exist in wrestling. Wrestling just has heels and faces, right? They have heroes and villains. There's no main character. There are certainly wrestlers who are him, right? Or her, like wrestlers who kind of transcend and begin to become more popular than the company even knows what to do with. An example would be LA Knight was so undeniable they had to push him up to the main to the top of the card essentially because as one of the main guys because he was just that fucking popular. Even though they didn't have anything for him to do, and it's very clear when you go back and watch that they really didn't know what to do with Knight. But yeah, there's major good guys and major bad guys, top of the card, middle of the card, and bottom of the card, and we'll get to the card in a moment. I believe it should be one of the terms. If not, again, we'll talk about the card. Wrestling, I liked Edge's branch off into acting. He's a cool character in Haven. I haven't seen that. Also, heels and faces swap roles pretty often. Well, not quite often. Yeah, I agree. Like, heels and faces aren't forever heels and faces. John Cena is one of very few examples of people who have been face and stayed face basically the entire time. He was like a pseudo heel in the beginning when he was the master of thugonomics. Word life, this is basic thugonomics. Like, he was sort of a heel, kind of, but kids fucking loved him, so they turned him face, and he's been face ever since. Fun fact, John Cena also has the world record for most granted Make-A-Wishes, which is kind of rad. He's a really cool dude. And then, yeah, tweeners would be people like Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley is a dude who can be a face and a heel. The crowd finds it very easy to either root for him or boo him. Tweeners are very hard to pull off. It's very hard to pull off a tweener character. A WWE example would be Drew McIntyre. People love Drew, but they also love to boo Drew. So it's very hard to play tweeners. But yes, faces, heels, and tweeners. Face, good guy. Heel, bad guy. Tweeners, kind of anti-hero or anti-villain type characters. Sell, selling, or sold. A sell would be to the act of showing damage of a particular move. When somebody takes a rock bottom, right, and they like act like their spine just got turned to dust, that would be selling, right? They are selling. They sold that move, right? When somebody like takes a super kick and acts like they just got knocked out, right? They are selling the move. They sold that move, right? So, and no sold or no selling or a no sell just means they didn't show any of the damage. Undertaker is very known for no selling, which means he'll just take a punch and just kind of turn his head and then look right back at you. Only very specific times is that considered okay. You usually always sell the move of your opponent because it keeps your opponent looking strong and it just makes the match more entertaining. It's very rare to see people no sell unless the company is actively trying to bury the other wrestler or the wrestler is trying to bury the other wrestler, which is because behind the scenes that kind of thing can happen. Bury just means to, I'm realizing there's so many terms. Bury just means what you think. It just means to like bury the dude's career. Just like try to ruin his career. Brock is an underrated seller. Selling is great. Fans love people who really sell, right? And Brock is an underrated seller. Brock sells moves like there's no tomorrow, and I hate when people are like, Brock doesn't give back. Brock is absolutely giving. Like, Brock will absolutely give back to other wrestlers in the ring. Like, he will sell your move. If he thinks you're cool and worth it, he will absolutely sell your move. You know? I'd imagine it's more used with bigger wrestlers than against smaller wrestlers, too. I'd imagine it's more... Wait, what? The terminology is something I've never understood, so it's really... Oh, yeah. Cena wanted to go heel for his first match against The Rock, but the powers that be at the time didn't want to ruin their top merch seller. Yes, because that's a big thing, too, you have to keep in mind, is baby faces typically sell a fuck ton of merch. Cody Rhodes sells so much merch, and as well he should, because Cody's our guy. All right, Cody is the modern day John Cena. You know, Cody's our dude. But Cody actually has it a little bit easier because Cody doesn't see nearly the same backlash that Cena did. Anyway. That last message was about no selling. Oh, yeah, no selling is... So... Yes and no. Like, oftentimes the bigger wrestlers will no-sell smaller wrestlers' moves. And that's okay if that's the story being... If they're telling, like, a David versus Goliath type story, that's okay. But typically, like, the Big Show would still sell moves by, like, Rey Mysterio. Right? The Big Show being a very tall man, and Rey being obviously very, very small dude. Adrenaline in my soul, something, something, Cody Rhodes. Yes, we have to move on. Stiff. Stiff is when a wrestler makes genuine impact, whether on purpose or by accident. So when you stiff your opponent, say you go in for a punch, usually you want to like hit him right. I realize you guys can't see that. You want to hit him right in like your like the inside of your forearm. So you go to hit. Boom, hits the inside of their forearm, kind of knocks them back, but doesn't hurt them that bad. You know, like just, you want to protect your opponent. You never want to make your opponent like injured. That's like a very like uncool thing to do. And the locker room will actually probably shun you for doing that. Right. So you want to make sure that your opponent is safe, and you want to like, wrestlers who are safe are considered like really, really kind and good people. Look up Minoru Suzuki. Minoru Suzuki is a fucking stiff wrestler, dude. It's not always a bad thing. to be stiff. Bob Holly, Hardcore Holly, as an example, was a very stiff wrestler, especially with new wrestlers, because he wanted to like really teach them how wrestling works. He had this thing called a jackknife powerbomb, and that shit fucking looked like it hurt. All right, was it a jackknife powerbomb? No, that wasn't. No, that was Kevin's. Right? No, what was Alabama Slam? That's what it was. He had the Alabama Slam, and that shit looked like it hurt, dude. People still use that move. It still fucking hurts. But stiff. So yeah, if you like go to fake punch your opponent and then you actually connect, that is called being stiff. There is a very funny incident where Braun Strowman, a very big fuck off giant of a man, was stiff with Brock Lesnar and kicked Brock Lesnar twice in the head stiff, meaning he actually did make contact. It was an accident, but he did make fucking contact. And when that happens, in Brock's case, you receive a receipt. A receipt is when one wrestler hurts another who previously hurt them. So let's go back to the Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman example. When Braun kicked Brock in the head, Brock proceeded to beat the living shit out of Braun. He hit Braun in the face full force so fucking hard that Braun's skull moved to the side before his skin caught up. That is called a receipt. A receipt is another good example of a receipt could be, say you stiff your opponent, you hit them upside the head, and you guys lock up. Usually a lockup where the two dudes like put each other's hands on their shoulders and try to push each other. That's when two wrestlers are usually talking about what they want to do. And that'll happen, and they'll lock up, and the other wrestler will be like, dude, I'm sorry. And the other guy will be like, no worries, you'll get your receipt, right? Like, you'll get that receipt, right? And then at some point in the match, you'll get that fucking receipt, and it's gonna hurt, right? Some moves you can't fake, others you can, but a receipt is usually a move that you can fake that you decide not to because your opponent hurt you at some point. That's a receipt, right? If you fuck up in the ring, you will get your receipt for that, right? Wrestlers are mostly stiff when they wrestle their close friend. Again, like I said, wrestling stiff is either on purpose or by accident. And even when it's on purpose, it can usually be like for funsies because you know your opponent can take it, right? Like if you're friends with somebody, you wrestle a little stiff, that's not that bad, right? Like it's not that bad because it's like, well, you know the other guy can take it, so it's okay, you know? But that's not something that most wrestlers will do, right? Because it's still considered really fucking unsafe. Friends tend to rehearse the shit out of a match. Because, yeah, like, you want your match to be, like, a 5-star classic. But in terms of the community and not Dave Meltzer. There's no part of this where we touch on Dave Meltzer, but why would you? Anyway, heat. Generating a purposeful negative reaction from fans. So, gaining heat. So, you want heat if you're a heel. If you're a heel, you want heat from the audience, right? So you want to be like, oh, the face is a douche, and I beat him up the other day, and it was fun. Ha ha ha. And then the crowd goes, boo. That's heat. When they go boo, that's heat. When they boo you, the boo is heat, right? You want heat. Heat. If you're a heel, you want heat. You want the audience to hate you. You want them to not like you. Now there's 3 versions of heat. Heat is good. You want regular heat. Cheap heat is fine and is very easy to do. Cheap heat, as an example, let's say you're in, let's say you go to Scotiabank Arena. That's the arena in Toronto, and you're the bad guy, and you go out to the ring, and you're like, you know, this, like, my opponent sucks more than the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is truly saying something. That hurt me to say because as a Canadian, we like the Leafs. But, so, you know, you say something to get the audience to boo you that is, like, very easy, right? Like, oh, like think of like I'm trying to think of like a local hero. Like if you go somewhere and you make fun of the local hero, right? And you're like, he sucks. Boo, that's cheap heat because it's really easy. It's cheap. It's simple. It's easy to do. It's an easy way to get heat, right? Cheap heat. Cheap heat is fine. It usually gets an eye roll from most people because it's like, okay, whatever. All right. Because it's really only gonna matter to the people in that arena, right? Dirty Dom is top heat. Dirty Dom is true heat. Anyway, but there is a type of heat that you don't want, and that is genuine heat. I'm trying to think of a more recent example. Genuine heat with the fans means the fans don't like hate you because you're the bad guy in the story. They don't kayfabe hate you. They like genuinely don't like you. I'm trying to think of like a wrestler right now who people like genuinely don't. Chris Jericho is a great. Velveteen Dream is a really good example. Gable Steveson is a very good example. There are people who have like genuine heat. I'll use the Chris Jericho example. Chris Jericho is still wrestling. He is well past his prime, which breaks my heart because I used to be a huge Chris Jericho fan. But a lot of things have come out about Jericho over time that are really fucking dark and really uncool, and he very rarely puts young talent over. As an older talent, that's not something you typically do. Jericho, it was so bad that Jericho received "Please retire." Like, please retire, do 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 do. Please retire, do 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 do. Those were the chants that he received. That is genuine heat, and you do not want that. That is very, very like not good. Logan Paul is rapidly approaching genuine heat because Logan has had the United States Championship, which is a mid-card championship. We'll get into that in a minute. Logan has had the United States Championship for, I think, over 200 days, and he has defended it twice. Not great. Not great. And on top of that, people have been joking that he's been defending Donald Trump more than he's been defending his championship, which is fucking embarrassing, quite frankly. So yeah, that like you get to a point where like you want the audience to hate you as a heel, but you don't want them to like cancel you on Twitter. You know, you don't want them to genuinely dislike you. He'll lose it at SummerSlam. Yeah. No, he'd better. He'd better. Has been pending a frivolous lawsuit and won't be at the Japan show for some reason. Yeah, so that's another big thing. WWE is currently touring Japan. Will be touring Japan. Logan will not be there for business reasons. And definitely not the thing that he will be remembered for, that being an obnoxious tourist who mocked people in the Suicide Forest. That would be crazy. Definitely not that. That's definitely not the reason why he's not attending. And also, yeah, he's suing CoffeeZilla, which is quite frankly embarrassing. He is Logan Paul. Logan Paul is an amazing wrestler in the ring. Love to see him wrestle, but it's getting to a point where it's not really worth it, and it just makes me miss Ricochet even more. If you know, you know. He's a wrestler now. He's been a wrestler for a very long time. Isn't he banned from Japan? Yes, he is banned. Pop. No, not a delicious drink like I have here with my Diet Pepsi. Pop. Generating a purposeful... Oh, that's supposed to be purposeful positive reaction from fans. Apologies. Mistyped, apparently. No, he is straight up banned from Japan. He is actually banned. A pop is when the crowd roars in positive jubilation, right? So a big pop would be let's say like, there was an example where Roman Reigns was doing a promo, and at some point he goes, and then there's my little brother, Seth Rollins. And the crowd thinks he's about to keep talking, and he's like, exactly, no pop. Right? Like, no pop just means, or sorry, pop means when the crowd cheers, when the crowd pops, when it explodes, right? Like, it explodes and cheers. When Cody finally beat Roman for the WWE Championship, the crowd pop was insane. It was the loudest I had ever heard. So when a crowd pops, it's a big cheer. Whenever Cena comes out, yeah, whenever John Cena's music hits and the crowd cheers, that is a pop, right? Oh, okay, I guess that was it. I'm actually gonna go back for a minute. So there is some terms that were left out. Again, you don't need to know all of these. It's just these are some terms that might help you. Over. Being over means the crowd loves you. When you're over, it means you're over with the crowd. Like the character that you're playing is over, right? Like they love you, you're over, right? Not over as in you're canceled, over as in you went over the hurdle and now they love you, right? You're currently over. You're on top of the hill. You're over the hill, right? You're not Underhill, you're Overhill. Corpsing, like, you don't really need to know corpsing. Like I don't think that's like a necessary one. Like corpsing is like a term, but I'm not gonna go over every single term, you know. Like there's a bunch of terms that I don't feel like you necessarily like need, right? Corpsing, kind of self-explanatory. It's just when they go limp, right? Leon, thank you for the 3 months. Thank you for continuing to be a member of the elite parliament. What else should you know? What other terms? That's pretty much all the terms that are like you're gonna see the most. Like there's not many other like terms I can think of that you're gonna see that are like this prominent as kayfabe, heel, face, blah blah blah. These are like the main ones that you need to know. Oh, I gotta move over. Whee! Next up, let's go ahead and talk about the eras of wrestling. An important note, these eras are focused around events surrounding WWE, and different promotions have their own timelines with their own eras. WWE's eras just tend to coincide with the overall community as they are the biggest game in town. I have changed a few things as well, so fair warning there. All of that to say, this is not like... This is how I view the eras of wrestling. Some people view them differently. And these eras in wrestling are mainly focused around WWE because, again, WWE is... WWE is the biggest game in town, right? So it's where the big boys play. Although according to AEW, they're where the best wrestle. But yeah, this is kind of where like the big names play, right? Is WWE. I love WWE. I love WWE. So let's go over the eras of wrestling. The Formation era. This would be from, this is what I'm calling the Formation era. This is 1963 to about 1980. This would be the era of Bruno Sammartino, who is the, to this day, the longest reigning WWE champion. I believe it was still WWE. Triple dub E. Double E. He is still the nod writing in notepad. yes. The Attitude Era is still the greatest era in WWE. It is not. It is the current era. If you go back and watch Attitude Era, it's kind of a fucking mess. I'm gonna be honest. It's like car crash TV. If you love it, you love it. But man, I am not a huge fan of the Attitude Era. It's the era that I grew up in, but as time has gone on, I'm not nostalgic for it the way I think a lot of people are. Like, I think it's still fun, but it's very car crash. Not much wrestling involved in the Attitude Era. But yeah, the Formation Era is basically, like, this is back when wrestling was still made up of territories. So the US was basically split up into different territories that all had their own wrestling Industries, and Vince McMahon would eventually, like, Vince McMahon Jr., I should say, the Vince McMahon that you guys know, would eventually, like, take them all. Like, he would basically... The Formation era was basically Avengers Infinity War, but for Vince instead of Thanos, where he just basically went through and got all the different territories together under the umbrella, and the mighty, powerful umbrella of the WWE. Although at the time, it was actually the WWF, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. This is before they got the F out, but we will actually get into getting the F out as we continue. And yes, Bruno Sammartino, I believe, reigned for several years. I forget the exact number. I think it's like 7. I don't care because it's a very long time ago, but you should at the very least respect Bruno as kind of the king of this era. Next up, the Golden Era. This would be from 1980 to 1993. The Golden Era is the land of giants. We are talking very campish, very cartoony wrestling, but this was the era in which WWF got very over. We also saw this was the rise of WCW as well. And WCW and WWF were basically big rivals during the Golden Era as well as the Attitude Era, but we'll get to the Attitude Era in a moment. The Golden Era, well, and also the New Generations Era, but again, we'll get there. And so the Golden Era is essentially the era of people like Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh yeah, Mean Gene. Let me tell you something, Mean Gene. Oh yeah. This was the era of Ricky Steamboat. This was the era of people like Rowdy Roddy Piper, my guy. It is also, unfortunately, the era of that big fucking lying douchebag, Terry, aka Hulk Hogan. Absolute scumbag piece of shit. I have no respect for him at all. I don't care about Hulk Hogan. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. The dude could trip into a sewer and I would do nothing but laugh. Hulk Hogan, not die, obviously. I just mean fall into a sewer. I have no respect for Hulk. None at all. Hulk Hogan is, Hulk Hogan is big scumbag. Hulk Hogan is basically known as, like, there's a meme about Hulk Hogan called, "That's not gonna work for me, brother." Because anytime somebody was going to go over, Hulk would make it so that they didn't and that he went over instead. Hulk put other wrestlers down so that he could remain at the top of the card. Top of the card just means top billing, like the top guy. So, yeah, Hulk is kind of the face that ran the place in the Golden Era. But that's not necessarily a good thing. Hulk kept his power by basically manipulating everyone around him. So yeah, Hulk is kind of just... Hulk Hogan is an embarrassing person, and I choose to not really... It's hard to separate him from the Golden Era, so I choose to instead to put up people like, you know, like Macho Man and Rowdy Roddy Piper, Ricky Steamboat, stuff like that. That's kind of who you'd rather put in that place, because they were doing really cool stuff at that time. Also, Ric Flair was there too, I guess. Wow. Also, Ric Flair was there too, I guess. The New Generation Era. This is when wrestling became really cool, at least if you ask me. And Haku! So the New Generation Era ran from the years 1993 to 1997, very brief era of time, but very important, as this would see the eventual, like, the departure of the old school kind of cartoony wrestling, where it was like Saturday morning cartoons. That would eventually go away. Also, forgot to mention Andre the Giant. So fucking dumb of me. Andre is also an absolute legend. We stand Andre in this house. Andre's the true king of the Golden Era, in my opinion. But the New Generation Era would see the departure of dudes like Andre, like Roddy. These names would eventually, you know, like retire and go off and do other things, and we would see the rise of the new generation. The new generation being names like Bret Hart, the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. That's his catchphrase. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but that is Bret's catchphrase. It would also see the rise of none other than the Heartbreak Kid, HBK, Shawn Michaels. Shawn, in my opinion, is the guy of the new generation era. Shawn brought in all new like fans into like the arena because he was just so not what was shown before. Shawn is like first of all, Shawn wore the gayest outfits. Like, Shawn was a gay icon, and I don't think he realized it. I still don't think he realizes it. But Shawn was known as like the ladies' man. His theme song was literally like, "They think I'm cute. I know I'm sexy. I got the looks that drive the girls wild. I got the moves that really move them. I send chills up and down their spine. I'm just a sexy boy, sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy." Like, that was his theme song. People fucking loved Shawn. I'm just a sexy boy. Like, people love Shawn. To this day, Shawn is still like the GOAT. People love Shawn Michaels. He was a bit of a shitter. He did do some politicking of his own. Not quite to the same degree as, you know, Hulk Hogan, who recently fired a model from his from advertising his stupid drink because she was a black woman. Because Hulk Hogan is a racist. And nor did Shawn Michaels attend an inauguration for an actual monster. That would be crazy. So yeah, Shawn did do some politicking. Politicking just means like manipulating the system behind the scenes. He would like push himself above other wrestlers. Very uncool shit. Shawn has very much apologized since then, and probably the most uncomfortable moment in all of wrestling is actually due to Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. But again, that's the Montreal Screwjob. That's a lesson in and of itself. I'm not even gonna get into that shit, but that's a very awkward situation. Oh yeah, the Screwjob. Yeah, we're not gonna talk about the Screwjob. The Screwjob's, that's its own can of worms. Was Stone Cold Steve Austin in this era or the next one? Well, Stone Cold Steve Austin was not, but I believe it was Stunning Steve Austin was, actually. And the Ringmaster Steve Austin was technically part of the new generation. He was around. Yeah, so he was like around, but not Stone Cold Steve Austin. That character wouldn't appear until the next generation after this. Shawn did not sleep with that woman. In fact, he was up all night. Oh my god. Speaking of Stone Cold, let's talk about who might be my favorite wrestler of all time, that being Stone Cold Steve Austin, and what was essentially his era, that being the Attitude Era, which ran from 1997 to 2002. The Attitude Era is when wrestling, so the Golden Era was wrestling at its peak, in like the 80s, and then the Attitude Era towards the late 90s was when wrestling came back with a big vengeance and was stupid popular. Wrestling in the Attitude Era was very different, though. The Golden Era was cartoony and fun. Good guys were good guys and bad guys were bad guys. The Attitude Era, everybody was basically a ginormous douchebag. Everybody was an anti-hero, especially Stone Cold. Everybody, but like, there was still good and evil, but people wanted like awfulness. Like, people wanted like bad shit, right? This would also see the end of WWE's rival WCW, as the Attitude Era is essentially Car Crash TV, but WCW went too far into like the trashiness of it that people just kind of stopped caring about it. You can go too far with trashiness, and the WWE did not go that far. There was lots of swearing in the Attitude Era. The Attitude Era is basically what it sounds like. It had an attitude, right? This would also be around the time, well, the tail end of the Attitude Era we'll get to in a moment. The Attitude Era was like crawling in my skin with these wounds that will not heal. I wouldn't say that. Actually, no. The Attitude Era wasn't quite crawling in my skin. The Attitude Era was, the Attitude Era was more like, yeah, this time I'ma let it all come out. This time I'ma stand up and shout. I'ma do things my way. It's my way or the highway. Like the Attitude Era is more like, if you weren't there, you might not get it. The Attitude Era was like grungy. The Attitude Era was like grungy, but like trash grungy, you know? Like it was like, the Attitude Era was not Linkin Park. The Attitude Era was Limp Bizkit. That's what the Attitude Era was. Like, yeah. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. What? Keep rolling, 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 rolling. Come on. Like, that's the Attitude Era. That Undertaker theme, but yeah, keep rolling, 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 rolling. What? Rolling, 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 rolling. Come on. The Attitude Era is cringy, and when you look back on it, and honestly, like, wildly fucking inappropriate, given, like, the age range of people who were watching at the time. Including, because this is around the time that a very tiny little owl started watching wrestling. Wildly fucking inappropriate. Yeah, I don't know if I would let if I had like a nephew who was my age at the time that the Attitude Era was coming out, probably wouldn't let him watch it, honestly. There's some amazing rivalries. There's some like, I mean like industry defining rivalries, right? ECW was also another promotion that rose up around that time, and then very swiftly died a honestly tragic death. ECW was Extreme Championship Wrestling, and they were the hardest of hardcore wrestling. We're talking barbed wire bats, flaming tables, just brutal, like blood covering the mat, like brutal shit. That was ECW. With legends such as Tommy Dreamer, The Sandman, Sabu, and Rob Van Dam, who was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. Tommy Dreamer's also a douchebag, but I won't really get into that. Yeah, the lesbian angle with Tori Wilson and Dawn Marie. Yeah, very, very inappropriate. Oh, and Raven! How could I forget Raven? You're so right. The invasion was fun. The invasion basically was, I suppose we should talk about the invasion because it's kind of important. The invasion storyline. So sometimes in wrestling, one company will invade another company, right? This has happened in the past. In fact, WWE was not the originator of the invasion angle. They actually stole it from New Japan. But the invasion angle was essentially when WCW went out of business, the person who bought it was Vince McMahon, which meant that Vince then had WWF and WCW, and he would eventually then also take ECW. So now Vince's competition was literally his. So what ends up happening is they do a storyline where it turns out that Vince wasn't actually the name on the contract. It was his son Shane and his daughter Stephanie. And so Shane and Stephanie have the WCW and ECW wrestlers invade the WWF. And it becomes WWF versus ECW and WCW, with WWF obviously coming out the winners. Now, mind you, because a lot of the WCW guys didn't opt into a contract, most of the WCW mainstays and big names such as Sting did not make the jump over. So yeah, that sucked. But for the most part, like, you got named. This is Booker T, the five-time WCW champion. Booker T was, as I said, the 5-time WCW champion. He came over during that and had to take, I think it was a huge pay cut in order to make the jump over. Poor Booker. But Booker's on a lot of Mount Rushmores. Booker's the man. People love Booker T. Booker T did come over in that. But this was around the time. So in true Attitude Era fashion, it was mostly a facade, and there wasn't actually much attitude, as the WWF would soon have to get the F out. That was because the World Wildlife Federation told them to stop using WWF because they actually had the trademark. So the World Wildlife Federation, which you might know by of their logo of a panda bear, sued the WWF for the rights to the name, and WWF lost essentially and had to get the F out. So that's why it is now referred to as WWE, which is now how I will be referring to it. So the WWF stopped existing at the end of the Attitude Era, and with a lot of people of the Attitude Era basically just kind of winding their careers down around this time, the Attitude Era being, of course, the era of dudes like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Undertaker was very popular in this time, although Undertaker did appear during the tail end of the Golden Era. Undertaker is a long mainstay. Undertaker was the American Badass during the Attitude Era, dropped the undead zombie and became this cool undead biker, which was actually really fun. A lot of like big names, Triple H, right? Like DX with Triple H and Shawn Michaels was invented around this time. Lots of big names in the Attitude Era. But with the end of the WWF, with it becoming WWE, marked the beginning of a new era. The ruthless... Sorry, I said it wrong. Ruthless Aggression Era. Why is it called Ruthless Aggression Era, Mr. Underhill? I will tell you, Parliament. It is called Ruthless Aggression, because that's what John Cena says to Kurt Angle in what is considered the first episode of the Ruthless Aggression Era. Kurt Angle was a big part of the Attitude Era as well. Tag team wrestling was arguably the hottest it had been during the Attitude Era with the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys. But the Ruthless Aggression Era would begin in 2002 to 2008. And this was basically the time where a new generation of stars began to make their appearance. Some Attitude Era stars were still around, but this would see the rise of what is considered the golden class, right, of Florida Championship Wrestling. Florida Championship Wrestling is, or was, a WWE developmental brand, and arguably the greatest wrestling class of all time comes from this company, that being John Cena, Randy Orton, Batista, Brock Lesnar, and the unbelievably underrated Shelton Benjamin come out of the Ruthless Aggression Era. Now, obviously, 4 of those dudes would go on to be world champions. Shelton is also, I consider Shelton part of that class. Shelton is unbelievably underrated, might genuinely be the gold standard. Yeah, Shelton might be the most underrated wrestler of all time. Shelton is great. Like, genuinely, what a friggin' talent. Some of them are monsters. Or some of them are, movie stars, that's true. They are also monsters, but a lot of the Ruthless Aggression Era characters, True, also a sweetheart. He's such a fucking sweetheart. We stand Shelton Benjamin in this house. That man deserves at least one world title reign. before he retires. He's fantastic. Anyway, the Ruthless Aggression Era would see, in my opinion, the death of the Attitude Era, like the genuine, like, this shit is now over, is the match Rock versus Brock. That's where I would consider the Attitude Era over. It is when The Rock loses to Brock Lesnar, who at the time was the next big thing. He was actually managed by Paul Heyman, the greatest manager of all time, if you don't include Paul Bearer. But I do include Paul Bearer, and I still think Paul Heyman is better. And yeah, Paul Heyman was Brock Lesnar's mouthpiece. Brock Lesnar destroyed The Rock. This is the best history lesson. Thank you. So yeah. But the Ruthless Aggression Era is my, like, I was around for the Attitude Era, but you got to keep in mind I was young. I was a young boy. The Ruthless Aggression Era was when I started to I was growing up a little bit, so I remember more of the Ruthless Aggression Era than I do the Attitude Era. The Ruthless Aggression Era, I hold that as a very, close place in my heart. Love the Ruthless Aggression Era. It's what saw the rise of John Cena, Batista, Brock Lesnar, and of course Randall Keith, Randy Orton. Randy Orton obviously still wrestling today. He hears voices in his head, but this is back when he joined arguably the most evil group of all time, Evolution. That being Randy Orton, Ric Flair, Batista, and Triple H. Fucking mental. Triple H's reign of terror began during the Ruthless Aggression Era, where Triple H was basically the fucking champion, and it didn't matter if you didn't like it. He would always find a way back to the heavyweight championship, which was very funny. So, yeah, Ruthless Aggression Era, I have a lot of love for. This was a very fun time. But that would lead to the next one. This is where I stopped watching. The PG Era. The PG Era technically is, in my opinion, two eras. That being the PC Era and also the Reality Era. So the PC Era goes from 2008 to 2000. Some people consider the PC Era or the PG Era to only be 2008 to 2014. I consider the PG Era to include the Reality Era because the Reality Era it's the same fucking thing. The only difference is that they started doing more reality shows around this time. And with more of a focus on like reality TV. The PG Era is this is when John Cena, for some people, got kind of annoying. It's when a lot of their bigger names started to leave for Hollywood. And this is, I believe, the lowest viewed era in WRASSLIN. I believe. I could be wrong on that one. But yeah, the PG Era was kind of a rough go. Reality Era, also kind of a rough go. Is this the era that they released those strange wrestling cartoon movie spin-offs? Yes, this would be that time. The PG Era was mostly saved by one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, CM Punk. CM Punk basically carried the PG Era on his fucking back. As well as the Reality Era, but again, I just consider them the same thing. I just consider the PG Era 2008, 2016. This is also where Vince became an absolute, I'm convinced that Vince was replaced by like a pod person around this time. You were also absolutely allowed to make fun of Vince because Vince is a horrible person. So you're absolutely allowed to make fun of Vince. This would lead to the new era from 2016 to 2020. Things begin to turn around. This is where we see the beginning of the women's revolution. What did he do? I don't even have time to get into it. Just look up Vince McMahon and you'll see. The new era would see the rise of women's wrestling. This is when women's wrestling really took off. During the Attitude Era, we did have the likes of Trish Stratus and Lita and people like Chyna and people like Ivory and stuff like that. But it was still very much like bra and panties matches and stuff like that, like mud wrestling matches, very goofy shit. Very like not great, and Lita and Trish in particular absolutely deserve better because they were amazing in the ring. But they were forced to do these stupid bra and panties matches, which were so fucking stupid, but like whatever. The new era would see women's wrestling. This is basically the time of like the women's revolution where women's wrestling really took over. Women did not matter in the women were very much discarded in the Attitude Era, and it was incredibly gross. And another reason why I'm not a big fan of the Attitude Era. I still love the Attitude Era for all of its faults though, because it's still car crash TV and it's very fun. So new era women would include the likes of the Four Horsewomen. This was also when like NXT became much more of a prominent thing. So the Four Horsewomen would be Becky Lynch, the Man, as she refers to herself. Becky is fantastic. I don't give a shit what people say about her. I think she's great. Charlotte Flair, the daughter of Ric Flair. Charlotte actually took up wrestling to honor her brother who passed away. And so that's very sweet, and she's very excellent. She could be a bit much sometimes. But Charlotte is so friggin' great in the ring. Fantastic. Better than her father, in my opinion. I think Charlotte's fantastic. Bayley also rose up around this time. Bayley's still wrestling. The current WWE Women's Champion is Bayley. And then there was, who at the time, her name was Sasha Banks, but now she is known as Mercedes Moné in AEW. But those four rose up around the same time, really took over the scene, and women's wrestling became a much bigger thing during this time, which was awesome. This would also see this would begin to see the rise of probably the greatest supernatural character that WWE had since Taker back in the Golden Era. That being the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, the late Bray Wyatt. Bray would also pass away relatively recently. But Bray is shows up around this time. He is just fucking phenomenal. Whether he's the Fiend, whether he's like the Firefly Funhouse host Bray Wyatt, whether he's the swamp man, the man who lives in the swamps. Bray was the best at like creating this like really spooky environment while still making you care. He had a fucking baller finisher called the Sister Abigail. Bray's legacy actually lives on through his brother Bo Dallas, who is now leading a group called the Wyatt Six, but sick as in like they are sick, not six of them, but there will also be six of them. But yeah, so Bray's legacy lives on, even though Bray would unfortunately pass away in between the new era and the modern era that we're in right now. But within the new era, unfortunately, is also what some people refer to as the Thunderdome era. And yes, that is how you spell the Wyatt Six. The Thunderdome era, some other people call it, myself included, the Pandemic era, because Thunderdome makes it sound cooler than it was. The Pandemic era was fucking rough, homie. The Pandemic era / Thunderdome era is basically when COVID hit and you couldn't have people in the audience anymore, so they weren't sure what to do. So at first they just wrestled in empty arenas, which was fucking rough. Except it wasn't even arenas, it was just the PC, which is the Performance Center. WWE has this thing called the Performance Center where they train wrestlers, and wrestlers who are on like currently like with the company can go train. So they literally set up shop in the Performance Center to an empty crowd, which was rough. Eventually they would decided that was kind of rough, and so they added in the Thunderdome. The Thunderdome was basically, instead of fans in seats, they surrounded the ring with big fuck-off monitors that had fans watching from home. So fans would pay to appear on a TV screen and the arena. It was rough. The pandemic era was really rough. The PG era has its moments where it's pretty rough, but the pandemic era is probably the roughest. But again, I kind of consider pandemic era to be just part of the new era. I also hate that it's called the new era, because, like, Jesus Christ, I hate when the new generation, the new era, like, stupid. Don't call your generation new, because it will one day not be new. I hate it. So dumb. Lots of pops were wasted during the pandemic. Lots of big moments were unfortunately, like, wasted. There is one moment that I do love from the pandemic era, and I will always love this moment. Drew McIntyre wins the WWE Championship. And this was a huge moment, because it's a moment he had been working for his entire career. And unfortunately, he won that belt in front of nobody. There was no fans in the arena. But when his music hit and he won, he's like on the mat. He just beat Brock fucking Lesnar for the title. He's exhausted, and he looks over at the camera, and he reaches out to the camera and has a big smile on his face. Basically, his hand outstretched to the audience, saying, "Hey man, like, we're in this shit together." And during the beginning of the pandemic, that was so appreciated, man. That's a moment I'll always remember. That was very sweet. So that is one moment of the pandemic era that was great. There was also the Firefly Funhouse match with John Cena versus Bray Wyatt, where it was basically not a wrestling match, but it also was. Go watch the Firefly Funhouse match. It's actually on YouTube. Really awesome. Also, Undertaker's last match happens during the new era / pandemic era, during a cinematic match between him and AJ Styles, where he gets to use his thunder again. He gets to use his lightning powers, which was really fun. But yeah, I highly recommend Taker's last match. It's goofy and silly, and a lot of people don't like it, but I love it. I think it's fun. Which leads us to the Renaissance era, which is 2021 to right now. The Renaissance era saw the rise of the Bloodline, and you better acknowledge your tribal chief, Roman Reigns, but it also saw the return of one Cody Rhodes. Cody was basically let go from the WWE, toured around, came back, and came back with a story to finish to win the belt for his father, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, because Dusty never got the belt. So Cody wanted to return to finish his father's legacy, which is a fucking awesome story. This was also the era that Vince got booted out because he's an old creep, and he was replaced by Triple H, who's been doing a phenomenal job. This would also see the return of The Rock and his gigantic ego, but I'm not gonna lie, his ego actually came in handy, because it made for one of the craziest WrestleManias of all time. This is where we are sitting right now. We are going into a very brave new world. WWE is going to be on Netflix starting next year. The beginning of next year, WWE will be moving to Netflix for the first time. And the start of the WWE's first year with Netflix will also be the final run for John Cena. John Cena's final run begins at the beginning of the Netflix run, like the Netflix deal. Will begin with the start of John Cena's last tour, which is really crazy. And Cody is the current champion. Roman is going to return at some point. The Bloodline's still going strong with Solo Sikoa. And Jacob Fatu, although I do think that Solo should be kicked out and Jacob should take over, but that's just me. There's talks about a revised WCW on Netflix. I'd be here for it. I'm here for it. But yeah, I didn't know Triple H took over. That's so cool. He did, and he's very tuned in. Triple H is great at what he does. He's really good. But that is basically the eras of wrestling. I know that slide took quite a bit to get through, but we got through it together. Let's get to the last slide here. The examples of wrestling companies. These are some of the bigger names in the scene right now. Obviously, you have WWE. And just underneath them, I have WCW because I guess they don't exist anymore, but they were a fairly prominent name at the time. Beside WWE, you might see TNA Impact, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. TNA is actually where Joe Hendry wrestles. I believe in Joe Hendry. That's where Joe Hendry wrestles. TNA has a pretty tight relationship right now with WWE, with TNA wrestlers actually hopping over to WWE on occasion, which is pretty cool. And then WWE wrestlers also making the jump over to Impact, but usually NXT. So they have they're calling it NXTNA because it's like NXT and TNA working together. I do think it's inevitable that we're gonna see SmackDown and Raw, like WWE's like main flagship shows, have some kind of crossover with TNA at some point as well. Over here we have Stardom on the bottom there, just beside WCW. Stardom is Joshi Wrestling. It is a Japanese company where Japan has a huge wrestling community over there, and their wrestlers are friggin' phenomenal. This is Stardom is all women. It is a women specific wrestling company, and they are, like, I would genuinely argue that after America, Japan is the second biggest, if like when it comes to wrestling, and in fact a lot of their wrestlers are miles ahead of most American wrestlers. And then places in Europe, especially the UK, have really great wrestling as well. But yeah, a lot of people will then make the jump either to Stardom or to the king of sports, New Japan Pro Wrestling. This is New Japan. Is very big. New Japan is basically like Japan's WWE, but it doesn't operate the same way. It's just kind of the equivalent. And WWE's current competitor is, of course, AEW, All Elite Wrestling. AEW and New Japan have a very tight relationship, similar to WWE and TNA's relationship. And these are just a handful. There's definitely some that aren't here, as I see somebody saying Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor is also like connected to AEW as well. Ring of Honor is a very big one. There's probably a ton of different companies that you could probably think of, different wrestling companies that exist. There's big wrestling companies, small wrestling companies, all over the world. Tons and tons and tons of wrestling. Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling. TNA was built off the backs of guys like AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Sting, and Kurt Angle. Then Hulk Hogan tried to kill it. That is actually what happened. Fun fact, there was also a YouTube channel called What Culture. What Culture Wrestling would actually go on to make their own wrestling company called What Culture Pro Wrestling, WCPW. So there was actually a YouTube channel that spawned its own wrestling company. A YouTube channel that talked about wrestling spawned its own wrestling company that had gigantic names as part of WCPW, which was very fun, and the wonderful Adam Pacitti was part of that whole thing, which was just really cool and interesting. But yeah, that's just some examples. It's just to show you it's not just WWE out there. It is a huge, gigantic world out there. We don't talk about Adam. We talk about Pacitti. 3D VTuber Wrestling Underhill, you could do it. I would love to do something like that one day. But that leads us to the end here. Is there any questions, anything you guys would like me to get to? Any questions you have in regards to the WRASSLIN? Anything, any burning questions you might have? Anything I can answer for you in regards to wrestling? Anything you guys want to discuss in regards to wrestling? Do let me know. But yeah. AAA is Mexican wrestling. Mexican wrestling is also bad fucking ass. Luchador wrestling is amazing. Yeah, there's also Lucha Underground, which is fucking awesome. Favorite match of all time? My all-time favorite match? I don't know. That's tough. That's hard. There's two jumping to mind. It's the first TLC match. So that's the Dudley Boys, the Hardy Boys, and Christian and Edge for the tag titles. That was pretty great. But then the other one that I could think of off the top of my head is like the most recent battle for the title, the battle for the very soul of WWE, that being Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes for the title at Mania 40, which is very recent, but it's an amazing match. I have one. Any VTubers who you think fits best with any wrestling associations? I don't know. I think I'd rather see them just do like Niji Sanji Pro Wrestling, you know. I'd rather just see them do like their own wrestling thing instead of joining a different wrestling company. Favorite face of Foley? Mankind. I do just love Mick in general, though. He's great. I haven't watched any wrestling recently, but do you recommend we watch some shows in particular? No, just dive in. Wrestling is a lot like soap operas. Just jump in. Like, they'll recap you on the weekly shows. Like, just jump in. There's always recaps, so you can, like, be caught up. Like, just jump in. Doesn't matter where. Just jump in. If you want to really get into it and I have not yet convinced you enough, I would recommend watching any of Super Eyepatch Wolf's wrestling videos. His Undertaker videos was fantastic. But yeah, if I have not yet convinced you and you need a little bit more convincing, I would highly recommend Eyepatch Wolf's YouTube videos on wrestling. That's actually what kind of got me back into it. So that's where I would suggest starting there. Was there anything touched on how cons have hosted cosplay wrestling matches? No, I think the cosplay wrestling matches are fun, but it's not quite like it's fun, but it's not quite like what I like about wrestling, if that makes any sense. Like, I like the storylines, I like the ongoing plot and like the beauty of it, you know. There's still some really killer spots in cosplay wrestling matches, but like it's just, I don't know. I don't really, it doesn't hit the same for me personally, but it is still pretty cool. Might be Roman versus Brock with the Seth cash-in. That's a good pick. That's a fun pick. The Seth cash-in is one of the best cash-ins of all time. If Underhill was a wrestler, would your finish be the Shire Driver? Absolutely. The Shire Driver. I love it. How did the WWE deal with the use of steroids? There was actually a big steroid scandal in the WWE a while ago, like a very long time ago. And it almost got WWE canceled from from TV. Like, they were almost like taken off the air because it was like a big thing. Now they have essentially what is called the wellness policy. So you have to take like drug tests every few months. And if they find out that you've been using any kind of drug, not just steroids, but any drugs, you're immediately kicked out of the company for a few months. Not permanently, just a couple months. It can be permanent, though, depending on how many times you violate the wellness policy. Favorite finisher? Crossroads. It's just fun to look at. Crossroads is great. Crossroads. What era's name would follow up the current era? What era's name would follow up the current era? I'm not sure what you mean, Drake. I'm sorry. What era's name would follow up the current era? Do you mean like what would I name the next era? Like, is that what you're... He does wrestling videos? Oh my god, I've missed so much. He does a handful. Like the next era after now. Well, I don't know. We're currently in the Renaissance era, so I don't even know what you would call it. We're still in the current era. We haven't, like, started the next era yet. I guess you could call it the Netflix era, if you really wanted to, because I think Netflix is going to be a very big deal. So that'll be a whole thing. What's your favorite John Cena rivalry? Edge or Punk? But also his rivalry with Randy is pretty fun too. But Edge or Punk? Drug test akin to the Olympics. Wow, yes, actually. Because it's yeah, you don't want your wrestlers on steroids. It's not good. But with that said, that is pretty much all the time we have. We went a little bit over time today. I didn't anticipate us talking that long about wrestling. So I am going to wrap up today's lecture here. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. So yeah, I will be back with more streams on the YouTube channel, but I am also streaming, of course, on the Purple site if you want to join me over there. I'm probably going to stream over there in a little bit. Probably later today, so make sure you join the Discord to always be notified when I'm going live over on the Purple site if you want to hang out, play some video games, stuff like that. But I gotta go because I'm apparently losing my voice. I can feel it. So yeah, I'm gonna go. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. And again, this was building up some character for later events. So if you were here, you were here. And hopefully you remember. Hinting at things. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. And until next time, bye!